Welcome to Founders Future, a podcast powered by Closers.io, where we dive into the journeys of innovative entrepreneurs and explore the road ahead for them and their companies. I'm your host, Ammar, and in each episode, we uncover the strategies behind impactful ventures, the challenges faced along the way, and the strategies driving their future growth. Today, we are absolutely thrilled to be joined by Dave Kline, founder and CEO of Management Accelerator, a high-impact, cohort-based leadership program crafting practical, proven frameworks to help managers become inspiring and effective leaders. Dave, welcome to Founders Future.
Thank you for having me. It's a better intro than I give myself usually.
You're a humble man. I am excited to dive in. I always like to start from the beginning. So take me back to before you started your company, before you even really got into coaching. What were you doing beforehand? And then what really motivated you to step into this space?
So I would say from the outside, I had a very traditional corporate career. I spent a couple of years in consulting, then 10 years at Moody's, which is a large financial services company, and then 10 more years at Bridgewater Associates, which at the time was the world's largest hedge fund. Almost a quarter century of sort of climbing the corporate ladder, leading different teams. And I left at the end of 2020. I guess we're 6 months into COVID at that point.
Yeah.
And my wife and I, who I've known since we were both in our teens from a small little 2 stoplight town in upstate New York, had always talked about having our own company. And I think what held us back was this idea of we had to have the big idea, the like world-changing venture. And what got us moving was the opportunity to buy a business. Now, funny enough, the business we bought went sideways shortly after buying it, but it created the pathway into what we do now, which is the leadership training, the management training, executive coaching, et cetera. So not exactly how we drew it up, but we like how it worked out.
Yeah. I'm curious, did you read a book? Like I have Buy Then Build, for example. Did you read a book to buy that business? Did you join any programs? What was that business? Just give us a brief background on that.
I would say the impetus or seeing the world through, you're pretty good at operating. You've been managing large teams for quite a period of time. Honestly, came from being in a certain circle of like Twitter more than anything else, whether it was the Nick Hubers and the Michael Girdleys and just people who had either holding companies or were running more like less sexy but profitable businesses. And us stepping back and saying, what do we want out of our lives? Part of it, we have now 2 teenage daughters, but back then they were 10 and 12. And just realizing that we'd already spent 60 or 70% of the hours that we were ever going to spend with them. And did I want some sort of venture-backed startup and having to work 80 or 100 hours a week to maybe make it work out over 5 to 7 years? Or could we buy a cash flowing business and just run it better? So when you put those things together, then at that point, the thing we were really excited about was this idea of a portfolio of digital assets. So the thing that we bought was a online review site for online courses. It was built, like legitimately built by a kid in Australia who we bought it from. And just it had 300 or 400 pages, 10 reviews each of the best piano programs, the best Python courses, et cetera. And it did well for a while, but it was 100% organic. And Google being Google changed its algorithm maybe 6 or 8 weeks after we bought it, cut our traffic in half, et cetera. But that's what got us to say that we needed to diversify into social media. Social media is how I got to know people like Michael Girdley and Nick Huber and Sahil Bloom, who I took a course with, that then got me writing, that then organically evolved into the thing I'm really credible in talking about is how do you lead a high performing team? And then we were just diversifying in this world of online course reviews. Let's have our own online course. We partnered with Maven. I thought we'd have 10 people in the first program. We had 140 people go on our wait list the first day we opened it. Wow. And haven't looked back.
That's awesome. I love that. I think the big thing that stands out for me is you never know what something will lead into. If you just take the leap, take the risk, even if that first thing doesn't work out, it molds you and crafts you into the person capable of making the next thing work.
Absolutely.
Walk me through your current company to give the listeners more context. Who would you say is your ideal customer? Who do you love to work with? And then from there, we can get into the different ways that people can work with you.
Yeah. I would say the dream ICP for us typically is a founder who is somewhere in the zone of, call it 50 to maybe 500 employees. The inflection point, a lot of times I think where we're providing the most value is they're not big enough to have a big HR department yet. They obviously don't have a learning and development team in-house. They're typically scaling quickly. And so you have lots of managers who are being elevated to lead other people and not having had that experience. And so the reason that they're our ideal is because we can work with them directly, right? They're going through this for the first time. Like, how do I now hire my leadership team? How do I level up? How do I put in place some basic systems, but don't ground my company to a halt because of a lot of bureaucracy? We often will work with their teams as well. So it's in addition to one-on-one executive coaching with that leader, they'll say, hey, can you help train my leadership team or train our new managers, et cetera? And so I think that's where we have the most impact. And we've, at least with 3 or 4 companies over the last few years, we've gone in a more sort of slow burn, working with the CEO, working with the executive teams, working to train the managers over a year. And those have been the most fruitful relationships for us. An AI company we worked with was doing $20 million when we started. 18 months later, they were doing 150 million. So
Wow.
they went from 500 employees to 5,000. So you can imagine the number of managers just being, oh, you graduated 3 months ago, now you're a team lead. Oh, 3 months
Yeah,
later, you're a manager. 3 months later, you're managing a function. So it was a wild time and pretty fun to be a part of.
I bet that's powerful. So you mentioned a couple things when it comes to the offerings. You have the one-on-one exec coaching, but then there's also the leadership training for the teams themselves. I know
Yep.
before we started, you also mentioned you're flying in to do a workshop. So walk me through the different offers that you have. And then once we have a lay of the land, I'd love to know what is really the main revenue driver?
Yeah. I think the easiest way when I explain it to people is I'll say we have a B2B offer and a B2C offer.
Okay.
And we have it for new managers and experienced managers. So just think of it as a 2 by 2. The way the business came to be is we actually started B2C, so individual leaders in the world who had experience, and that was our Management Accelerator. So when we originally taught that, it was online over the course of a month, 8 or 10 modules, 40 to 50 leaders from 40 to 50 companies. And we still run that 3 times a year, every year, with about 50 leaders. After a couple of years, some of those experienced leaders were saying, hey, do you have something that's a little more basic, a little earlier career, like the real foundational skills, et cetera? And so we built a second program called Management Fundamentals. And again, we offer that B2C. And so we'll have anywhere from 50 to 100 0 to 3 year experienced managers come in, and we're teaching them the 80/20 skills to get
Cool.
through managing their first team and beating the 60% failure rate. On the thing that's then happened though is companies have come to us and said, can you run either the experienced manager program or the new manager program in-house for us? And that's really the B2B business.
Mm,
And so we will probably do each of those programs anywhere from 6 to 10 times a year at various companies.
got
It
it.
works. It goes back to the ICP thing, which is it works at a certain scale. If you're a company of 10 people, just send them to our public program. If you're a
Yeah.
company of 200 and you want to talk about your culture and your values and your approaches inside of our program, then we can tailor it by coming in-house. We also can run it faster as part of, say, like a lot of people will do full week offsites, bring the company together, especially if they're remote, and we'll take a day or two to run our program for them when they're together.
Go for it. Were you gonna say something else?
No, I was gonna say, so that's 80/20 our business. Revenue wise, I would say we get more revenue from our experienced managers than our new managers. Part of it's just the price point. And then it breaks where it's a little bit more favorable for us, B2B versus B2C, but it's pretty close.
Got it. So the management fundamentals and the accelerator, that's on the B2C side. Is that accurate or no?
It's both. Like
Okay. Yeah.
those are marketed that way as B2C, but we run them in-house at companies as well. So that's the B2B
Perfect.
side.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And then when you say public program, is that like modules that I can just watch asynchronously, or does it also include coaching on top of that?
Actually, we always teach it live. So it's 90 minutes twice a week. Mar and I teaching it because we find a lot of the real juice, a lot of the benefit comes from the accountability. Like you kind of have to show up and do it. Yes, you can get the recording afterwards, but it's the opportunity to ask questions and to push us or to get me to clarify, or 2 different companies seeing things very differently and both of those leaders coming off mute and discussing it. And how do we put that together and how do we make sense of why it works here and doesn't work there, et cetera. I think that's how we've maintained such high ratings, is that
Yeah.
it's not just asynchronous and take it or leave it. We can adjust and tailor. I think one of the things you'll hear me say a lot when I get asked very pointed questions like, what's the right X? And it always starts with, it depends.
Yeah,
Depends on the state of your company. It depends on if you're growing or shrinking. It depends on the culture you have. But that's really hard to do asynchronously. That's really easy to do when we're all having a conversation.
100%. And I think it forces people to be present as well. Because I've had so many times where I'm listening to a course and I'm just doing other things and I'm not fully there and fully taking in the information. And it
Yep.
just, and now I have to go through it again and it's this whole ordeal. But
By the way, the stats are crazy. So asynchronous course completion rates are less than 7%. Live course completion rates exceed 70%. So you get a
wow.
10x increase in completion just by being live.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then if the focus is client results, it makes sense to do that.
Yes.
Walk me through the back end because I have a lot of coaches and consultants that listen to this. When it comes to acquiring leads, generating leads, acquiring customers, what do you do from a marketing perspective to get people interested in what you offer?
I'm smiling because we're terrible at it. We write a lot. So I
Okay.
would say the entire business is built on the back of organic content. That started with Twitter, where I have 100,000 followers, moved to LinkedIn, where I think I have 140 now. My wife started writing on LinkedIn. She's got over 100,000. If anything, she's worth studying because she grew from 0 to 100,000 in 6 months, which is crazy.
That's
That's the majority. So if you rewound the clock to when we started, that very first accelerator was 100% sourced from Twitter.
mm,
Now, flash forward to today, more than 50% of the leaders who enroll in our programs are word of mouth from previous alums, which is pretty
mm,
sweet. Like we have this flywheel now of peers sending other people from their company leaders send, if they've gone through like a private program, might send new leaders to catch up into the public program, things like that. We do have an email. We built a newsletter after year two. And so we've got about 50,000 people in our newsletter. We'll talk about it there. And then we run free half-hour workshops every month or so. And for the folks who come to that, we'll market to them as well, just in
cool.
terms of, hey, if you liked this free piece, we do this thing over here and it's paid and perhaps give
Yeah.
them discounts, et cetera. But those are really the three ways we get people today.
I'm curious why you say you're bad at it, because clearly it's been working and 100K plus followers is definitely a feat. Why do you say you're
Yeah, I guess it's all relative. Like I think about, I was having a conversation with someone today. My wife and I combined get between 400 and 500 new followers on LinkedIn every single day. We just don't talk to them. You know what I mean? If I didn't have anything else to do all day, the smartest thing for me to do would be to review everyone's profile, pick the 10 to 20% who are most aligned to my ICP, send them a personalized note in a DM, try to have a conversation, try to do a call, et cetera. And just practically, we have not built the systems to do that well
Yeah,
because it's just the two of us. And we're constantly going through this dance of, do we want a company and employees and all that comes with that? Or do we want to continue to have it's a great business. Like we're certainly doing fine. I shouldn't say it's not terrible, but I look at that and think, wow, there's probably 50 good conversations I could have every day that I'm not having.
easily.
And it's a question about what do you want to be when you grow up?
Have you have you ever thought about hiring setters or something like that? Because you could easily delegate that and have somebody be paid small base plus commission. What's the thought process there?
It has been a reluctance to have someone else tell our story, which I know is, again, I teach delegation. I know it's solvable, but there's been a reluctance to that. I think probably the most candid answer is I led teams for 20 plus years. It's really hard. Like it is, I feel like I can connect with people when I'm training them on how to do this because it's genuinely hard. People will break your heart. People will break your rules. Like people will break everything. They will also do amazing things. You'll be able to accomplish more with them than without them. It's this very Jekyll and Hyde
Yeah,
existence. I think part of it was for a while just the fact that we were able to keep growing, to keep using technology, that I could have it both. I didn't have to take on the complexity and the heartbreak to keep growing. I think we're getting to the stage now where we're seeing that level out. And that's why this conversation is actually relevant in the moment.
yeah, fair enough. Because I can imagine if you're growing and you have a lean team and it's just the two of you and you can have automations in place, technology in place, all that good stuff. So it's like we're growing. Why bring on more complexity?
Exactly.
It makes
And
perfect
it's
sense.
funny, and which I'm sure other folks who listen to Founders Future would relate to. It's like that first one there's a lot of complication that goes into the first one, right? Like, how do I pay somebody? Is it a consultant, not a consultant? If they're not a
Yeah.
consultant, all of a sudden, do I have to offer them benefits? How do I, and you get all of
Mm.
this administrative stuff that's particularly acute in the US. And you look at it and you're like, is the ROI of that first one going to be worth it? Back to your point of, I'm still growing, I'm still getting incremental gains just from technology and the two of us. And it moves down the list and then you never get to it.
Yeah, fair enough. And I think a lot of it has to do with where you want to go. But I think because we've worked with over 4,000 different coaches, consultants, agencies at this point, and with it sounds like with what a setter would do for you, it would be like a 1099 employee, small base, like I'm talking $1,500 a month, plus a percentage of cash collected. And then you would typically be taking those calls, or maybe you hire a closer and then they come in and they're 100% commission. But I don't know if you want to do that. With
Yeah.
that being said, what would that vision be? Like where do you want to take the company? What's your goals look like over the next few years?
Yeah. I think right now, partly what we're seeing with the content we're delivering is very focused on it's leadership and it's management, but leadership and management is probably most dominated by the topic of AI right now. And so, what does leadership look like in the age of AI? Is that just delegating to people, or is that learning when to delegate to agents and when to delegate to people? Is that how do you assemble teams? How do you motivate people when their jobs are under fire? All of these
Yeah.
interesting conversations. And so I think that's a piece of the direction we want to go. And so I think the probably the connected piece to that to how do you want to scale your business is if we're going to be working closely with leaders who are wrestling with these things, we should be wrestling with them too. We should have our hands on the technology. We should be trying to build agents. We should be trying to use automations. And so that's been the other piece is how big could we be on our own? Do I need setters? Do I need closers? Or is there a way to get there a different way? And I think that the downside to a small business when I'm working with scaling mid to large size companies is just you lose touch a little bit. And so forcing ourselves to eat our own cooking, try to solve the same problems they're solving, I think actually helps us be more relatable with them as we're working with them. So I think that's the direction we're going. We are going to launch and so I need a new word. We call it a membership. People want to call it a community. I think of it as like a group of like-minded leaders who are going to help rewrite that book on leadership in the age of AI. We're going to launch that in the
Mm.
next couple of weeks. And so it's some part of it is a better library of content. Some part of it is a place to come together and figure things out. Some part of it is a more scalable way for them to get coaching as they're leading through this. I've hesitated to call it community because I feel like it's a little bit played out. And most founders and leaders aren't super anxious to get into a side community. They want to get answers or they want to get help. And so that, I don't know, we'll figure out the word for it at some point, but
Fair enough. Is that
that's
going
like
to be
this.
like a school community model or it's a low ticket kind of thing?
Yeah, I guess the ticket is relative.
Yeah.
We'll probably tilt towards the higher end and be more, I would rather have fewer people with more skin in the game who want to make it great than to have a mass amount of people who are not engaged.
Yeah.
But again, relative to our programs, it'll be low ticket.
Cool. Yeah. I like that. What advice would you give new coaches getting into the leadership space in 2025, 2026?
I don't know if it's necessarily about where like 2025 or 2026, but I think the thing I would tell anybody, whether they're getting into the coaching business, the training business, or really any business, I'm like, you have to find a way to get somebody to give you $1. A lot of folks that I'll fumble into they'll ask for the quote unquote brain pickers. Can I pick your brain on this thing? I'm thinking about getting into your world. And a lot of times they're thinking about it versus if you're gonna be a coach, can you get someone to pay you to be a coach?
Yeah.
And if you can't get them to pay you to be a coach in money, can you get them to pay you in an endorsement or in a referral or in a testimonial? Can you get someone to pay you in their time? They're going to take a half an hour out of the day so you can coach them. If you can't convince them to do that, how are you ever going to convince them to give you money to do that? And getting out of the let me make the perfect logo and the perfect website. Like my website was built 3 weeks ago. We've been in this business for 5 years.
Mm.
You know what I mean? You don't need a website. You need
Yeah.
to let people know what you do. You need to be really good at it. You need to convince them to give you money. And if you can't figure out how to do that, keep doing it until you figure it out. So my advice would be that like don't convince yourself that all the administrative work surrounding a business is actually you creating a business.
1000%. revenue generating activities. That's what I always like to think of them as, especially when you're starting off. You just need to be doing something that will generate revenue.
Our first program, I wrote a Twitter thread. I put a $19 type form survey at the end. It was a terrible survey. I look back at it now. I'm like, I can't believe anyone completed this thing. It was 12 questions long.
Yeah.
And when we woke up in the morning, I had 140 submissions.
Yeah.
And then we offered 50 of the people on that list to come in the program. We only wanted 40. 40 of them paid me with a Stripe link. And so we sold out our first program before I had written a slide.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like $19 a Twitter thread and a form and a
Yeah.
Stripe link, and you can have a business. And so that's how simple it is if what you have is valuable.
Yes, that's the biggest piece. And I think a big part of that comes from your expertise and just how much time you spent learning all of these different things. What is the best way for people to reach out to you to work with you?
Luckily, I have a website now, so it's davekline.com. But practically, we're very active on both LinkedIn and Twitter. So Dkline II on Twitter, Dave Kline on LinkedIn. Management Playbook is our MGMT Playbook is our newsletter. And so really any of those three are easy ways to find us. They all interconnect.
Beautiful. Any final words before we wrap up?
The thing I would say to folks who are, I mean, 1 foot in, 1 foot out, thinking about this business or not, a lot of the other coaches or people who are aspiring coaches that I've heard from will say things like, it's just so saturated. There's so many coaches everywhere. It's just too competitive. And it always kind of makes me raise my eyebrow because I'm like, really? Are they good?
Yeah.
And it sometimes I find that the pictures paint a much more visceral picture. We were working with this company in Atlanta, Georgia, relatively early on in our journey. And he flew us down to train his 50 managers. And we got off the plane and we got onto this road in Atlanta, Georgia. And I remember very distinctly, it was like in the Uber and it said 6.2 miles up this single road. And we just passed office building after office building for 6.5 miles.
Mm.
And I remember turning to my wife and being like, we could come back to Georgia every week for the rest of our lives and not even train this road.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And that is one road in one metro, in one city, in one country. There are so many businesses, so many different ways people are making money that I think if you're telling yourself it's too saturated, you are pre-validating an excuse. And I would just
Yes,
say, don't do that. You don't need that many customers, clients, CEOs, people to coach in order to have a viable business. Just get out there and deliver value, get them to pay you for it, and repeat.
100%. I could not agree more. I think that's phenomenal advice. And you create a self-fulfilling prophecy when you tell yourself that it's saturated or that it's difficult
Yep.
to get clients. Tap into abundance. That's what it's all about.
Exactly. And find your intersection that's a little bit different than everyone else's.
Yes. Dave, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Anytime. So that wraps up another inspiring episode of Founders Future. To our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to go to davekline.com. That's Kline, davekline.com. And if you are a business owner, specifically a coach, consultant, or agency owner, and you're really looking to scale your business and you want to enhance your sales and marketing efforts, visit closers.io to hop on a call with our team and discover how we were able to go from zero to $30 million per year in less than 3 years. Until then, keep on climbing.